Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to this side event. We're about to begin the side event. Please mute your microphone and mobile phones to silent mode during the session unless you are given a chance to speak. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. I would like to welcome His Excellency Dr. Sri Vinastata, the Director of the Social Development Division of ESCAP, respectable Mr. Lim Poi Teak, our Chair of ASEAN Disability Forum, Ibu Maulani Rotin Sulu, the Secretary General, and also other ADF Steering Committee, respected Mr. Yosan Nainggolan as the lead researcher and also the local researchers from Southeast Asian countries on social inclusion of climate change. Welcome to the respected Bapak Arif Wibowo, the country manager of ICL EI Indonesia, and respectable on-site and offline participants of this side event. Thank you so much. We regret to inform you that Ms. Yulia Suryanti, the Director of Climate Change Adaptation from Indonesian Government of Environment and Forestry, is unable to attend in the last minute notice. So I would like to introduce myself. My name is Wika Devarianti. I'm from the ASEAN Disability Forum, who will be our master ceremony and moderator this afternoon. Welcome to today's event, Social Inclusion in Climate Change, Future Roadmap in Southeast Asia for the 11th Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development, or APFSD. It's hosted by the ASEAN Disability Forum and Social Development Division of ESCAP. We would like to thank everyone, both on-site and offline participants, for making time to attend this remarkable seminar. Ladies and gentlemen, on this occasion, allow me to introduce you to today's agenda. First, there's welcoming speech by ESCAP, presentation by speakers, Q&A, and then the last session is closing. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let's open the side event. Thank you so much. Next agenda will be a welcoming speech. Allow us to invite Dr. Sri Vinastata as the Director of the Social Development Division of ESCAP to deliver his welcome remark. Please welcome Dr. Sri Vinastata. Thank you very much.
Cannot be heard. Can it be heard?
You'll mute the microphone.
Please unmute the. Please unmute the. The mic off.
That persons with disabilities is one of the communities significantly affected by climate change and the need to involve them, including grassroots organizations as key stakeholders. Our own in Asia Pacific, the Jakarta Declaration on the Asian and Pacific Decade for Persons with Disability, 2023 to 2032, which is a guiding document for the current disability decade adopted by ESCAP member states, expresses specifically concern over increasingly critical issues faced by persons with disabilities regarding climate change. At sub-regional level, the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan 2025, mainstreaming the rights of persons with disabilities, also calls for its socio-cultural community to work with the private sector and other stakeholders to mainstream disability perspectives into its more, just a minute, into climate adaptation, waste management, and energy efficiency actions. I'd, in this regard, kind of acknowledge the tremendous contribution of our strong ally, the ASEAN Disability Forum, represented here by my friend P.T. Lim, for making a clarion call for immediate national level policy development and its implementation on these issues by governments and other stakeholders. Approximately 82% of persons with disabilities in Southeast Asia live below the poverty line and continue to face limited access to health, education, training, and decent work. Disasters and other situations caused by climate change have compounded adverse effects on their economic and social well-being. So as countries undertake adaptation and mitigation actions to address climate change, I think it's imperative that the specific needs and challenges faced by persons with disabilities must be kept in mind. So that is one of that's the most critical and immediate imperative. So in that light, I'd like to highlight the significance of the draft policy study that the ASEAN Disability Forum is going to present to us on encouraging social inclusion and disability rights principles on climate change policy in Southeast Asian countries. This is especially critical because it constitutes case studies and narratives of stories which we will hear about and we all know about, where we know how persons with disabilities have been specifically affected by climate change. It also presents a critical analysis of disability mainstreaming in national climate change policies at national level. I believe the study, which was conducted by researchers and advocates with disabilities in the ASEAN sub-region, would be one of the seminal ones and one of the first ones to lay the ground for policy development. And we hope that through this event, we can get inputs, including of everyone present here, and ADF colleagues will inform you more about the ways and means to do so during this event. I'd like to once again express our gratitude to ADF for being a powerful partner in encouraging disability inclusion in the entire Asia Pacific region. And I really thank them for partnering us in this side event. And I wish all of us a very, very productive event. And we hope that we have the outcomes that will really help ADF take the study forward. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Srivinastata. It was a delightful speech from you. So now, ladies and gentlemen, we are proceeding to the side event agenda. I will guide this session for about an hour as the moderator. We invite all distinguished speakers to come to the stage and Zoom. Please welcome the first speaker that are present on the side. The first speaker is Mr. Lim Pyotiak, the chair of ASEAN Disability Forum. He will speak on findings and recommendation of ADF policy brief on inclusion and climate change. Thank you. Please welcome Bapak Lim Pyotiak.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam. I remute. Hello.
Probably your language.
Can you open your Zoom, please?
Mute. The ASEAN Disability Forum and how we promote the big agenda of disability inclusive measures within, not only within ASEAN, but around the world if ever opportunity arises. I'm here to share with you, and later on my colleague Yosa will be talking to you about the background of this research that we are doing so that we can really be on the same page as to what we have accomplished within the ASEAN region for disability inclusive climate changes. So I'm just here to give you really the gist of what our report is all about. And basically, I summarize the recommendations of the report into four main recommendations. And we are also circulating, my colleague Yosa has made some arrangements to do the summary of the report. So there's some printed copies available, but very limited copy. So if you want to get hold of one, please do so. And if not, I think he'll be very happy to point you to the right link so that you can download a copy of not really our preliminary report, but this executive summary of what is this study all about. So jumping right into the four main recommendations that ADF is trying to promulgate here within ASEAN is that firstly, countries in Southeast Asia should subscribe to the Paris Agreement as a global commitment to handling climate change. It highlighted vulnerability groups, including persons with disabilities and indigenous people. So we want at the start to follow the mainstream idea of the Paris Agreement and making sure that it is disability inclusive. Secondly, second recommendations which came out very strongly among this study that we have concluded is that policymakers in Southeast Asian countries should have intensive discussions to impose a social inclusion principle in their national policies with a view to the full participation of persons with disabilities in the policy making process. I think that is the fundamental approach as far as disability inclusive policies are concerned with regards to climate change in this region. Thirdly, we want to highlight the best example, best practice example of Myanmar. Despite all the recent difficulties, they are doing quite a good job as far as we are concerned, because they have a role model in terms of inclusion, participation, and leadership of people with disabilities as far as this climate change topic is all about. Just to let you know is that in our report, we highlighted that Myanmar demonstrated an enhancing resilience project that is of critical importance on climate change issues. The project demonstrated the engagement of a diversity in the community within persons with disabilities and able-bodied persons in the community in this same project. So I think there's a very happy marriage of what we would call a disability inclusion in this project that they were handling. Finally, our last last recommendation is that the ASEAN Disability Forum, we will continue to play an active role in bridging the disability community and the governments in Southeast Asia to impose a social inclusion principle in all national policies. And that is basically what ADF is all about. We are here to advocate and promote the mainstreaming of rights of persons with disabilities in the ASEAN region. And as Dr. Tata referred to earlier on the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan 2025, we all know that we are trying our very best to, by 2025, to achieve mainstreaming the rights of persons with disabilities in the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lim Poetek. It was a very fruitful discussion. So the next coming up is a second speaker, Mr. Yosa Nainggolan, as the lead researcher of the Social Inclusion and Climate Change prepared by the ASEAN Disability Forum. He will tell us about the research background and process. Please welcome Mr. Yosa.
Yes, thank you, moderator. So actually, I will presenting the background of the ADF research study that finally we have a recommendation that already present by Mr. Lims. So actually, this study started because of the question why a person with disability in Southeast Asia should be concerned. So as you know that climate change has an impact on everyone, and no one would be resistant to climate change, including a vulnerable group such as a person with disability. And the study of climate change actually connecting with person with disability because the person with disability and climate change is still minor globally. And even in the region of Southeast Asia, the situation less attention than other areas in the world. Another disability people organizations or DPOs in the Southeast Asia region are lagging behind in terms of climate change information compared to other regions such as Europe and America. So another reason why the policy study should be done because the DPOs in Southeast Asia are not pay attention to climate change issues, which have a significant impact on person with disabilities. In addition, a government in Southeast Asia do not involve persons with disabilities in the policy making. Therefore, the climate change policy in Southeast Asia regions causes left behind of persons with disability. And last, why this paper, this study conducted because of the Asian Disability Forums encourage the implementation of the Asian Enabling of Master Plan 2025 to be fully implemented with the direct involvement of group with disability in every stage. Uh, this is the Enabling Master Plan is an Asian work plan to promoting and protect the rights of people with disabilities in ASEAN, which has a work program until in 2025. So what is the subject, actually what is the objective of the research? First, imposing social inclusion policies in Southeast Asia countries. Second, exchange knowledge and understanding on climate change and social inclusion among DPOs and climate change stakeholders. Third, enrich climate change and social inclusion, it's mean person with disability study and literature. And the last one is the objective of our study is imposing the networking of persons with disabilities in terms of climate change and social inclusion in Southeast Asia. So what is the activities of our study? We conducted a workshop and training, literature study for the collecting data, and we have a series of focus group discussion and reviewing the report. So now I will focus on the fact finding from each countries of Southeast Asia. In Malaysia, Malaysia actually has a national policy on climate change, which consists of 3 goals, 5 fundamental principles, 10 strategic goals, and 43 key action. But there is no mention about disability. However, Malaysia already has a law, namely the Person with Disabilities Act. In Chapter 5, Section 40 states that in the situation of risk and humanitarian emergency, persons with disability have the same right as other people, and government must take all necessary actions so the person with disability receive assistance in this situation. Then we move to Myanmar. Like Mr. Lim said, that Myanmar have a best practice of the program. So inclusive decision making that actually involves women and children with disabilities. However, it will be involved is still unclear. There is a research that authors suggest that strengthening support and funding mechanisms. Myanmar demonstrated an enhancing resilience, and this project demonstrates the engagement of diversity and the community between persons with disabilities and non-disabled people. So for Cambodia, actually Cambodia more progressive than other country due to the women and children disability issue. So they have a climate change strategy plan for gender and climate change 2030 until 2023. And Cambodia Climate Change Strategy 2040 and 23, but they're not mentioning specific quickly about the person with disability. They have a disaster management law 2015 and mention about the disability only mention about the statement about pay high attention to the needs of women, children, elderly, handicapped, and disabled person. And then Philippines, actually the policy of climate change mostly focus on loss and damage issue, but disability issue is not priority. They have a research of climate change in Southeast Asia as well, and they identify the barriers of person with disability due to climate change. The barriers are communication or international accessibility barriers, physically barriers, and attitudinal barriers. So person with disability data is a big problem in terms of loss and damage issue in Philippines. In Vietnam, Vietnam has incorporated social inclusion principle into its climate change policy to ensure that vulnerable and marginalized groups are considered in the country's effort to address climate change. So the policy including the gender equality and women resettlement and relocation and the poverty alleviation and livelihood support. Actually, for the Singapore also don't have a climate change policy, but they focus on the risk and management and disaster. This is the humanitarian emergency response and healthcare services. So there is an issue in Singapore. Actually, it's about meaningful participation, inclusion, and leadership of persons with disabilities. So the last one is Indonesia. So Indonesia already has several concrete work plans related to climate change mitigation and adaptation. But social inclusion in both sense, but there is no further elaboration. So Indonesia has in-depth studies exploring the knowledge of people with disabilities related to climate change. There is a result of focused discussion with the Research Institute. The knowledge and concept of people with disability on climate change is challenged. Therefore, Indonesia should readjust to build the concept of climate change for persons with disability. So the last presentation from my slide, we have a lesson learned. There are 4 lessons learned. First, the issue of climate change and disability in Southeast Asia countries is still stands alone. And the second, climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies still place persons with disability in the general context, such as vulnerable and marginalized group, or included in the GETSI context. The third, even the issues of women and children with disability, like in Myanmar, Vietnam, and Cambodia, have been included in several programs. The implementation of policy is still challenging. The last one, the medical and charity concept of person with disability is still used by several Southeast Asia countries. Therefore, it will be challenges in terms of encouraging a social inclusion principle that need comprehensive aspects. So that's all for my presentation. I'll be back to, I give the floor to a moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yosa. It was a complete elaboration. Maybe also we can hear from the next upcoming speakers, the local researchers from the Southeast Asian countries. There are 5 people as the local researchers on the climate change and inclusion policy brief. Probably we can start first from Ms. Alisa Sivaton. She's from Thailand. Please share your situation on climate change and inclusion in your country for 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, moderator, and thank you for giving such a wonderful opportunity to share. I think what Yosa have presented it's similar to what is Thailand. We have all legislations and policies related to climate change and related to disability are well in place. But however, these two agenda are not interlinked just yet. So whatever the plans that we have in Thailand about climate change, the policies, the master plan is not yet mention about person with disability. Most likely, or the procedure or the practical methodology that we're using, it's started by DPOs or OPDs or NGOs. And hence the government will have a share or support from the OPDs. However, as Yosa has shared with us about other countries in the region, it also replicates in Thailand that we still not yet involved person with disability, starting from the policy making down to the practicality. So I think in Thailand, it's probably have a variety of climate change issues, starting from the temperature of the surface is rising dramatically, and that caused the very unfortunate for agriculture, and person with disability rely on that quite a lot. And also with the urban area, it's flooding very badly recently, and the evacuation plan or the risk-giving plan is still not yet mentioned about person with disability. It seems that the local government and the national government just do it case by case. Whatever happened, then they're just facing the issue right there, but there's no such in place policies or legislations that all plans are talking about how we can deal with the situation with person with disabilities involved. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Elisa. Now we'll continue to Ms. Nandar from Myanmar. Available on the Zoom, please welcome Ms. Nandar to share about your situations on climate change and inclusion. Please welcome Ms. Nandar.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for giving that opportunity to share about our country's situation. Our country is facing a lot of current critical situation due to the politics and also and conflict. But we are now working with the disability inclusion, not only the climate change, but also the in social inclusion in every sector, especially for the children with disability and also women with disability. Currently, most of the international organizations trying to include persons with disability in their development process, but in Rakhine State and also in the Ninai and also in Kachin State, they're trying to do the person with disability with the climate change impact, and also they're trying to give the education how to protect the climate change risk occur in our country. Currently, the government support can be very weak, and the implementation is a little limited due to the current situation. But we try to collaborate with the other national organization and also international organization. And currently we give the disability identity card. So in the future, we will give any other support to them more, and also would like to be more social inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nander. It is appreciated. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Siti Lim from Singapore. Would you like to share your circumstances on the climate change and inclusion? Please welcome. Thank you, Pak.
I think it's quite typical of Singapore not to be to single out disability policies per se, but they are really working in the background to make sure that all people within Singapore have been managed in whatever plans that they have. So you may not have a specific remark on a disability inclusive statement, but there are definitely a great deal of promotion, public awareness programs, and public education program on climate changes in Singapore. In fact, we are leading in the region a water management program that recycles used water, particularly our urine, so that because we don't have enough water supply and we have to purchase water supply from our neighbor Malaysia, but we're also trying to be as self-sustaining as possible. So what we did, we used the process of reverse osmosis to take used water and filter it many times so that it can be potable. So if you come to Singapore and you're offered new water, it's actually not new water, but old water, recycled water. And we also got a very good water management program to alleviate floods. The Singapore Barrage project, which is a very massive multi-billion-dollar project that helps to control the inflow of water into our island so that we will not suffer the plight of being flooded all the time. And as you know, water level in Singapore is actually increasing. We are slowly sinking because of the rate of our development, but we're also making measures to make sure that the mitigating circumstances of massive floods in Singapore have been managed. So this barrage has a fantastic system of allowing water to come in and not allowing water to come in depending on the tides and all the various configurations. And there actually is a tour that you can go when you visit Singapore to look at some of these features. So how are people involved? People from all walks of life are involved. They are involved in to witness the progress. People with disabilities are encouraged to go because the facilities are wheelchair friendly and accessible for all types of disabilities. So again, let me underscore, there's no specific statement on disability, but there are definitely there are disability inclusive measures in place for some of these projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pak Lim. It is a valuable information. I will continue to the next person, Mr. Wong Yong Lu from Malaysia. Please welcome Mr. Wong. Could you please share with us the situations in Malaysia?
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you, Vika. So according to data from SCAP, the prevalence of disability in Malaysia is about 11.1%. However, the reality is they only have registered number of persons with disabilities about 2%. And data is important for policymakers to initiate or to implement or to plan policies that will benefit persons with disabilities. We strongly encourage persons with disabilities to register because we like to see, we believe there are many more persons with disabilities. The reason why they are not registered, probably number one, because of ignorance. Some people might not know they need to register, but the second one is they worry about stigmatization. So if we do not encourage persons with disabilities to register, it is impossible for us to get the actual data of the number, and it's impossible for us to have the true picture. So even the Person with Disabilities Act, as highlighted by Yosa just now in clause number 40, has provided some protection However, this is limited to only providing um, services or evacuation service to persons with disabilities. We are not really involved in designing, in planning, and also, most importantly, not consulted in designing the policies. Historically, Malaysia is not prone to disaster. We are quite safe country. Therefore, the level of understanding or acceptance on climate change is a little bit slow in our country. But recently, we have a few disasters. Like, for example, we have increasing in, like what Elisa said, in urban flooding, places that have never flooded before. Suddenly, we have flash floods. We also have earthquake in Sabah that is also fatal. So this has now increased the awareness on climate change. And there are two very important effect on persons with disabilities. First is rising cost of living, especially in the food security, because of increasing temperature. We do not have crops that yield much, so price of food is now increasing, and taking into account that many persons with disabilities do not have jobs and depend on social security, this will greatly impact them in their daily lives. Secondly is during disaster, especially flood, persons with disabilities are evacuated to evacuation centers. But how prepared are these centers to receive them, and whether these centers are accessible physically, or whether the information accessible is still a challenge. So our conclusion in Malaysia is we like to urge the government to include persons with disabilities in throughout the whole process, in planning in the policy planning, in implementation, and also aftermath of the disaster, whether they are given support to rebuild their life or to improve their situation. So this is in brief what is uncovered in our research. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. That was a very important notes for us as a feedback. And we're also going to proceed the important feedback from our next speaker, Bapak Arif Wibowo. Mr. Arif, if you are
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Apologize. Yes, thank you very much for this time and for the invitation, Ibu Maulani. See you again, and colleagues. I will share regarding my task today. So I would like to share my slides. I hope you can see this, that the question to myself
Pak
is
Arif,
what
can you
should
speak a bit louder, please? A bit louder,
Hello?
and put your microphone close to your mouth.
All right. Sorry. Test. Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, better,
Hello?
better. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me a little bit louder. Yes, thank you very much. My job, I have to share what should be done to address and solve the disability issues and the climate change issues. So on behalf of my experience and under the ICLE also, I have some slide that we can share to you. Again, what the main issue for the disabilities and other stakeholders, actually, we we have the similar potential impact related to the climate change. Again, we have very clear that the basic needs will be impacted by the climate change. As you can see from this slide, food security, water security, and then ecosystem loss. Like at the coastal area, we have a coral reef issue in the Asian countries also, and so disaster, potential extreme event, uh, and then abrupt event also. And then we don't mention related to the slow onset event sometimes. So I think this is the challenge for us, including these vulnerable group and then inclusiveness issues. How can we answer this challenge for these countries, for our region? And again, actually, we have already concepts how to mainstream the climate change issues into the national, regional development, let's say, in ASEAN country and our own country. We have two strategies, mitigation, which already well understood by us, that we have our own target to reduce emissions reduction, to reduce emission, of greenhouse gas, I mean. And then the other issue is quite challenging for us, is quite complex, the issues of the adaptation. So how can we both actually can be mainstream, integrated into our development? So ideally, we can achieve what we call it climate resilience development. But in practice, actually, vulnerable groups, gender issues, and including this today's discussion, mostly directly related to adaptation. So this is our challenge. How to do that? So because actually we have already what's that mandate of the inequalities is already adopted in the Paris agreements, and also has been identified by IPCC under that what we call it assessment report, which is already considered the social and economical disadvantage and marginalized people related to the impact of climate change. So how to do that? So it's in practice we have already what's that process business, I mean, business process, apologize. We have to have a kind of this approach. First, we should have a kind of baseline. We call it baseline, like mitigation. We need to have a baseline. What's that? One, we have to assess our existing and future impacts, vulnerability, and risk related to climate change. So we need to have that kind of baseline in every level, including what we call it indicator related to the involvement of and what's that vulnerable groups, disabilities, gender, children, and so on. And then how to use that in the planning process, adaptation plan. We know in Asian countries already some national adaptation plan, but how to integrate that vulnerability related to this assessment in the assessment of this vulnerability and risk assessment. I mean, based on that, so we can see the potential adaptation action plan. So, and then how can we implement in the development process, mainstream into the budget planning, implementation, and so on. So I think we already have that kind of business process. How can we adopt it into our national as well as local regulation, and then involving the concept of inclusiveness? We have a stakeholder, not only government, universities, NGO, and community groups, something like that. So I think in because of the short time, I think we already have this guideline. How can we later on work together again with in this region, how to push again into this system? Because again, we need someone to initiate that, and then we have already very standardized methodology. We should consider a vulnerability indicator in this aspect, because we have already social protection program. What kind of indicator should be there education, what's that, age, gender, and other issues related to the livelihood, and then what kind of capacity already there, insurance probably, and then maybe other technology already there. So under the vulnerability, we can classify it into two what's a sub indicator, something like. First, related to the sensitiveness of vulnerable group, and other what's the other factor which can be a part of the vulnerability indicator. The second one is adaptive capacity, so under the this, and then exposure. This is really related to the climate change information, as we discussed since the beginning, that many issues related to the climate change issues, coastal issues, extreme weather and extreme climate change, and how can we have a capacity to identify the
Arif,
system? Yes,
hello, can you hear me?
yeah,
Yeah. If you can start to wrap up, but if you are you able to
right.
raise your
No, okay.
voice a little bit more, because people in the room, particularly at the back end, cannot hear you
Sorry.
too well.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, this is much
Yeah,
better. Yeah. Thank you
much
very
better.
much.
Sorry. Yeah, just few minutes. This is the scheme. How can we operationalize this APCC framework guideline in our development process? We should have a vulnerability assessment, exposure, and then hazard assessment. How can we put into the as a baseline in our location, in our priority sector, and so on? And then this is now the way how to little bit detail how to identify this more specific indicator later on. What kind of inequality that should be included, covered in this assessment, and then what kind of potential loss of assets and potential income suffering, something like that. So this is especially for disadvantaged group, vulnerable groups, and so on. So and then we also identify the right exposure information related to this disadvantaged group. So I think this is we know a lot of information in our region. Yeah, we can use that. Finally, actually, in the last COP already also stressed some issues that we can strengthen in the future. Now we are already coming to the what we call it global stocktake since this year. So every parties and non-parties also be invited to share their experience regarding the global stocktake. The first one, and then the second one is inequality related to phasing out the fossil fuel, as we know that we are struggling with that as developing countries, because renewable energy is still very high cost. But again, we should try to start with that, to ensure the involvement of what's that, inclusivities and equitable, which is really make us opportunity to find any opportunity for climate adaptation. And Pak Yusa mentioned about the potential funding for loss and damage also. So this COP already decided there is a special budget for loss and damage. So there are potential resources that already was developed, so we can further follow up this information. I think that's my slides that maybe we can discuss, and there are some clarification. And thank you very much. I apologize for the inconvenience maybe in the connection. So thank you, Ibu Wika.
Thank you very much, Pak Alif. And it sounds like the last slide that you are showing is very important in terms of actions decided by COP27 and COP28, which you might want to show
Yeah.
again. But I'm
Yes.
so sure that a lot of people here and then online have questions and also comments
Please.
and suggestions.
Yeah.
So may we now proceed to the next section of this side event, which is the question and answer, which we can have for another 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
We have plenty of time. Thank you very much. So may I now point at a person at the, yeah, I see 4 hands already in our room, and I'm so sure there will be online hands as well. So may I ask a lady at the back? Yes, and could you please speak loudly into the microphone and say your name and then organization and which country you are from, and then we would appreciate your brief comments and then questions. Thank you.
Hello everybody, I'm Maria Qureshi from Pakistan. I'm disability right activist. I have a suggestion. Climate change has have grave consequences to GBV as it increases drives for violence, particularly in the conflict, displacement, food insecurity, social economic impact, and the disruption of protection system. Member states should develop climate change protection and adaptability plan that are inclusive of persons with disabilities, ensuring their meaningful participation in climate-related conversations and decision-making process is crucial to understanding and addressing the disproportionate impact of climate change on marginalized groups. Ensure physical and informational infrastructure that incorporates universal design principles to improve the chances of safety and survival of all of society, including persons with disabilities. Climate funds are being created to assist in mitigation, adaptation, and building resilience in the poorest and most affected countries. Strong advocacy by and with persons with disability is needed to ensure disability inclusion is a key criterion in the all climate funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your statement. And then may I now ask a person from the, yes, Duya from Mongolia. Would you like to? Oh, okay. So on behalf of Duya, who does not speak, and is that okay for me to read your statement? Thank you very much. Greetings. I am Duram Sulen, serving as the Executive Director of the Culture Center of the Deaf Mongolia. I lead and I have questions. I extend my gratitude to UNESCAP and the ASEAN Disability Forum for organizing such a commendable event. I acknowledge climate change impacts everyone, jeopardizing our livelihood, such as harvest and livestock, consequently exacerbating poverty among vulnerable citizens. However, grassroots organizations like ours encounter significant challenges in combating climate change due to our limited resources. Therefore, I implore both UNESCAP and ASEAN Disability Forum to explore avenues of support for communities like ours. Are there any programs or funding opportunities available to empower representatives of persons with disabilities in community in mitigating the effects of climate change? Your assistance will be greatly appreciated. Thank you. So that was her request. Calm question, which maybe PT and can also respond. Okay.
Here
would you like
we
to
have
respond? Okay.
one more.
So
comment
we have
from-
one more.
Yeah.
Right next to Miss Dura.
Okay.
Duya.
My name is Amar and I'm deaf and I'm working in Pakistan at the Cross Disability Organization. And thank you for the presentations. I'm really grateful, especially for including the deaf people and the sign language interpretation. That's important, but it's not the international sign language, so sometimes it's very difficult for the diversified organizations and the countries to understand. And it's all about the reasonable accommodation, so it's very important to see that. And I'm really thankful to the UNESCAP for taking all the decades of work to see and promoting the disability inclusion, and I'm looking forward to work on more in new decade.
Thank you very much for your suggestion. Yes, and then I see, but actually the person who was there was raising hand before. May I have your name and then, yes, and then I go to you at the back and then I go to another person and maybe online, which you can take.
Hello everyone, it's me Viswa from Nepal, representing Blind Youth Association Nepal. When we talk about disability and climate change, I think we should not forget the evidence part, data part, and data part before the disaster. And moreover, we have to think of WAS and the evacuation centers as well. We have been working now with the government and various intergovernment agencies regarding the WAS centers, which is very less developed, and it is like just the center where no one can access, not the blind, not the wheelchair users, not others. Very mild disabilities would only get access to that. So we, I think, have to think a lot more about the evacuation centers. And another thing, when we talk about the disaster, thinking about disaster risk reduction activities from the very front is like preparing persons with disabilities. Back then in Nepal, when there was an earthquake, or back then in Nepal, when there is any sort of thing, persons with disabilities are never prepared. They are never thought in beforehand. So thinking beforehand is the must. And lastly, when we talk about the information for persons with disabilities regarding climate change or any of the disaster that would happen, most of us are left out with the information, like deaf communities, like blind, like learning disabilities, which is like majorly like hampered. So these are the things most to be considered when we talk about this. Thank you.
Well stated, and for your information, ESCAP has a technical cooperation project on disability inclusive disaster risk reduction, in which Nepal is one of the targeted countries, and we are creating e-learning tool to that effect, and I'd like to be in touch with you later as well. Sorry, before Pierre, the lady at the back, yes, thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Bunthon Chantalavongvisa. I am representing of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos. I'm from Laos, but I live in exile in Germany. I would like to speak about a problem with climate change in Laos with disability. Climate change in Laos is too much problem. Why? The human rights situation in Laos is very bad. The people don't have basis of human rights, don't have basis of assembly and media. The international aid, especially from UN, for the people of disability it has not enough. Why? The corruption is too much. The corruption in Laos is in every level of the administration. My question of you, how can we help the people of disability in Laos? Maybe directly from the UN, from international organization directly for these people in Laos. Why the government don't give help for the people? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Governance is very important. I would like to ask PT as an ASEAN Disability Forum to unite with people in persons with disabilities in Laos. And I would like to ask GGF after that, and then come back to APIA.
Thank you very much. Well, my name is Yolanda Munoz. Hello?
Okay. Please, yeah, Yolanda?
Yes.
Is this Yolanda?
Yes, it's me. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I will not turn on my camera because it's almost 1 a.m. I am based in Montreal, Canada.
Can people hear Yolanda?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, can you hear me
there?
there?
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to make a very brief announcement that, well, Global Green Grants Fund, who also supported the efforts of the ASEAN Disability Forum together with the Disability Rights Fund, can provide funding for small grassroots organizations if they want to implement a project related to climate change and disability. So I have put my information in the chat, and I give you permission to share this information so you can contact me, and we can discuss what would be the best way to support your endeavors. We understand that precisely grassroots organizations are in a very precarious position, and it is our mission precisely to provide seed funding or small grants to these organizations who are working towards climate change, where people with disabilities have a proactive stance in these endeavors. Thank you very much. That's all, and congratulations to all the team for all this amazing work.
Thank you very much, Yoronda. So that kind of response to queries from our colleagues in the room and perhaps online, and then her email address is in the chat box. So people who would like to communicate with her are very much welcome and encouraged to do so. So may I now ask Abir?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I congratulate again to the ASEAN Forum and UNESCAP for organizing this very important and the only side event on disability within the APFSD. Thank you very much for that. Just quickly, we have been witnessing the engagement of women and girls with disability who are not part of the disaster response, specifically facing gender-based violence, sexual harassment, and the referral and the systems are not accessible to address during the disasters. It's very important to talk about that, and we also need to review the Sendai framework. The gender gap analysis is happening these days, so it's important to include the recommendations of women and girls with disabilities on that platform as well. We have an Equal World campaign that's working all over the world, and that campaign have a specific component to address the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. So with the UNESCAP, with the ASEAN Forum, we can collectively share those studies in the climate change and the disaster risk response. Thirdly, I want to mention, in March, the CRPD committee is going to launch the special article or the statement on the climate change and disability. So it's important to integrate that as well, because we are working on the country specific to the regional and the global perspective. So it's important to have our voices more visible, more heard, so at least we can achieve the sustainable development goals in an inclusive and equal way together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierre, providing this information of the avenue of advocacy and then importance of including issues faced by women and girls with disabilities in the DIDR itself, and then climate change action. Actually, the Pakistan and Laos are other two targeted countries for that ESCAP project on DIDR, and we make sure that issue will be reflected. So we have a couple more minutes to have questions and any comments or anything else that you would like to address?
Let me very quickly thank you, Aiko, for the excellent moderating. I think we don't have enough time to answer every comment and every question that has been raised by participants here in person as well as those online. But I just want to touch very broadly on the topic of disability inclusion and some of the principles which I feel are very important for us to establish first, because in our recommendations for this report, we emphasize a great deal on disability inclusive principles, and then we highlighted an example where there's a very good case example of how in Myanmar they are able to really integrate the people with disabilities as well as able-bodied persons into this project. And I think it's a good showcase to illustrate how disability inclusion can start. As many people said, the journey of 1,000 miles start with one step. So we need to start by starting. And the first principle that I want to talk about for disability inclusion is that disability inclusion can never be an afterthought. It has to be from the very beginning when we plan it out. Don't talk about going backwards, because things move very fast, and in this day and age, when we don't include and start planning from the start, we'll be left far behind. Number two, the principle about disability inclusion is this whole great idea of reasonable accommodation. Because sometimes we often forget that different types of disability needs special uh, uh, accommodation as far as they need. Some of my friends talk about those who are deaf and those who are blind, and the way in which we can reach out to them in terms of messaging, creating greater public awareness. And I think the recent COVID pandemic brought this across to us very, very clearly. Because many people are left behind because they were unable to receive information and communicate and go about gathering facts and information on how to be able to survive under the pandemic. Thirdly, which I think is also very important, is the whole idea of resource allocation. And I think while many people say, look, we need to have resources to start, but then there's always this tension about resource allocation: is how much is enough and who gets what, and we all know that the pie is ever shrinking. And if we don't be responsible and be good stewards of what the public has given us, then I think we are going to lose it very quickly. So that's some of my thoughts on disability inclusion, and I'm sure you can sort it out within your own sphere of influence how this can be affected. Thank you.
Thank you, PT. Any other questions? Pak Arif, may I just ask you a clarification about this global stock taking that you are talking about? Is that going to be done by when, and what is the actual process of vulnerability assessment that you are talking about?
Yeah.
Then we go on to the next agenda. Thank you.
Yes, the last year COP just was that come to an agreement that they will invite all parties and non-party stakeholders to provide submission in terms of experience, whatever experience on adaptation, on mitigations, as well as on means of implementations. What are these means of implementation? Is including capacity building, what kind of capacity building have been done, what are the needs, what are the existing support already there, what are the gaps. Second one is finance, a very critical point related to financing. And then the last one is technology transfer. What kind of technology transfer may already experience in our country related to these disabilities? Let's say we can start with that. So based on that, I think we also need to use as a modalities for us in these regions to use the existing resources. That one of this is from the triple G fund, yeah, GGGF. Other resources are also available, like from adaptation fund and then green climate funds and so on. I think the commitment of funds is, I think, getting increased and increased, but some other point that we don't have capacity to prepare the good proposal. This is our homework. So let's work together, equally ready to work with you all in the region, in ASEAN, in the region. We can work with any location you are. So I think that's my uh, my invitation. Let's work together. Let's start with something. We can work in Asian level, no problem. We can work in three or four city. We can work there. I think it's good momentum for us. Let's start to work to make it happen. Yeah, let's start with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your kind invitation to work together. And that leads to our next information to be provided by PT on how people like yourselves in the audience can make inputs to this report and how it's going to be used and by when ADF would like to have the report. Then we will conclude the event.
Thank you very much, Pa Arif, and I think your remarks kind of segue in very smoothly on how we can continue this conversation. We only starting to begin to start, how to really carry on this great conversation, because the work is out there and we're just slowly making progress towards developing action plan and how we can collaborate further. My colleague here, Yosa, would be very happy to receive your feedback and your comments and your suggestions, and hopefully we want it by middle of March. Yeah, by middle of March. Please, as they say in English literature, the Ides of March. 15th of March will be the day where we close the gates, and then we will get rid of Julian. But we want to get your feedback hopefully by middle of March, and Yosa's email and contact point is provided, and we will be very happy to receive comments from you. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us in this session.
Thank you. Srinivas, before we conclude, would you like to provide your brief comments or any reflections?
I think we heard about many places where the words are there, the statements are there. I think it's time to move to action. I think people are finding the words reflected in various declarations. It's how do you move forward? So implementation plans and monitoring of those implementation plans is key. And that has to be done with participation of persons with disabilities. And for that, persons with disabilities need to be aware, and their capacity has to be built. When they are at the table, they should know issues. And that's why I'm particularly encouraged by this event, to see the level of awareness. So we do have a critical mass of people. The second point that I'd like to focus on is the importance of disability inclusive, climate responsive social protection. The need for social protection is going to change drastically the way we look at social protection. So I think we need to integrate disability into this new form of social protection. But I think last but not least, an important, very critical, clear area, which I don't think was mentioned very much except by a couple of people, is the importance of disability inclusion when you're looking at green jobs. So it needs to be inclusive green jobs. The job market is going to change considerably, and it's important that the skills and capacities of persons with disabilities to contribute equally to the labor market has to be really be strengthened. So on that count, thank you very much, Aiko. I think it's been a very productive and a very focused side event. So thank you very much for allowing SCAP to really co-organizing this with you, ADF. It's been a privilege. Thank you. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody online and on site to come to this event, and let's continue our journey on this issue as well as other areas of disability inclusion. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.